Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Washington State University's 16th COVID-19 Town Hall. I'll be honest with you, I thought we had these town halls for COVID behind us, but the Delta variant has thrown us a curveball, and so here we are again. My name is Phil Weiler. I'm Vice President for Marketing and Communications here at Washington State University, and again, I will be our moderator for today's session. I have to say, as I said, if COVID's taught us anything, it's taught us to be flexible. As you all know, our intent was to be holding this town hall yesterday at 1 o'clock. However, late Tuesday, we learned that the governor was going to be holding his news conference yesterday, and it was going to happen after our town hall. And we figured we probably wanted to hear what he had to say before we got together and shared information. So we're here today. Thank you for rearranging your schedules to be with us. I think we have a lot of important information to talk about, and I think we've got some exciting things to talk about as well as we get ready for the new semester. So by now, you no doubt have heard that the governor did make an announcement yesterday stating that all educators, whether it be in public schools or private schools, including higher ed, would be required to be fully vaccinated by October 18th. In addition, the governor has reinstituted a mask mandate for indoor activities in public spaces. That mask mandate goes into effect on Monday. We'll talk a lot more about this later in the session, but we have some other material we'd like to cover as well. So before we get started, I'll say thank you to everybody who submitted questions in advance. I will note that one of the probably most popular questions we got was a question about whether WSU was going to implement a mask mandate. The governor's decision yesterday has made that a moot point, although I will share with you that the university was intending to look at mask mandates for the start of the semester, something that we thought was important. Our operations team had put together a pretty elaborate set of criteria that helped us determine location by location where those mask requirements would be in play. But again, with the governor's decision yesterday, everybody will be required to wear a mask starting on Monday. The other thing I'll mention is, as we've done in the past, we have our subject matter experts monitoring the chat in YouTube. If you do have questions that you don't think are getting answered, you can post them there and the subject matter experts will answer them in real time. I will say, though, please do listen to the presenters. What we've noticed in the past is sometimes people will ask questions that are actually being answered verbally at the same time that they're posting them. So hopefully we'll have a pretty good handle on things and be able to answer those before you have to post something in the chat session. With that, let's go ahead and get started. Let me introduce our panelists, and then I'll turn it over to the president to get us kicked off. We're joined today by Kirk Schultz, president of the Washington State University System. Elizabeth Chilton, she's our provost, executive vice president, and the chancellor designate for the WSU Pullman campus. We also have Haley Rupp. Haley is deputy chief of staff and the director of strategic communications for the office of the president. Thank you, Haley, for joining us. Also have Joel Schwarzkopf. Joel is the executive director of Cougar Health Services, which is on the WSU Pullman campus. Next, we have Teresa Elliott-Cheslick. She is vice president and chief human resources officer for the system. We also have Jill Creighton, who's dean of students. Hi, Jill. And finally, we have Pat Chun, who's director of athletics for WSU. So with that, let me turn it over to President Schultz. He can get us kicked off and we will dive in.
Well, great, Phil, thanks. And let me take this opportunity to welcome all of you who are joining us today, and welcome to the fall 2021 semester. And we are so excited to have it in person at all of our campus locations. Here in Pullman, if you go to Walmart, try and go to a restaurant, just try and drive through campus. It is super exciting to see our students everywhere. I had an opportunity this last weekend to participate and help some families move into our residence halls in Pullman. And it was fun to hear parents talk about their expectations for their sons or daughters or grandsons, granddaughters, or guardians' experience. It was neat to hear students talk about their excitement of being physically present on campus and looking forward to seeing our faculty and staff in person for those classes and those experiences that are all part of being a Coug at all of our campuses across the state of Washington. I want to express my appreciation to our faculty, staff, and students across all of our campuses who've been vaccinated. Joel's going to share with you a little bit later some of the percentages of folks who are vaccinated. And I will tell you, I've been so impressed how seriously people have taken this, and we're really excited to see and share those numbers with you. If you still haven't gotten the vaccine yet, we want to encourage you strongly to consider doing that. Masking, all these other things are important, but getting that vaccine allows us to have the in-person experiences that so many people talked about that they would like for this fall semester. I also know as I go through different events, we've had several receptions at the President's House on the Pullman campus, and people got lots of questions. And there's no way we can ever answer everything that's out there. Phil mentioned to put it in the chat and things like that. We also have an email address and other places that you can use. If we get through the day and you just don't feel your question's been answered, send it along and we'll work to address that. I would urge everybody, and you'll probably hear this from multiple speakers, to consult the COVID-19 webpage frequently. I'm not going to give the web address here. I will tell you this, though. Just do a Google search on WSU COVID-19. It pops to the top of the list. I did that before that to make sure it works. It pops up. It's got FAQ, newest policies, things like that. It's a fluid situation. And we keep updating that every day as we get good information. So just because you looked at it 2 weeks ago, it's different today. So make sure you always look there first and see if your question is answered or your concern is addressed in that particular place. I know when I participated in Move In, it was a fun event, but I'll tell you what, the first 15 or 20 minutes, I was a little, apprehensive. I had not been around a lot of people in person besides one-on-one, one-on-two types of things in the office. And it was interesting to me that after I met the first family, we're moving them into the room. I start talking to some of our students about what they're interested in doing and why they're at WSU. I just felt things really calm personally and feel much more comfortable doing that. I know many of you are apprehensive about being in the classroom as a student or faculty member or staff member. I think once we get underway, it's going to feel different. And we all remember why we work at a university and interact with our students. That just, I remember I was tired after 2 hours of moving stuff around, but I also kind of was walking with my back a little straighter and a big smile on my face, just because you go, that's why I work in higher education. Finally, we pledge to keep our communications open. I know Phil mentioned that it had been January last time that we did something like this. We're going to continue to do these through the course of the semester. We don't know what the frequency is going to be yet, but I think it's important that if nothing else, we say, here's the latest, here's how things are going, here's what's happening on campus, our campuses across the system and in our communities. So thank you for being here. I know my colleagues got a lot of great information to share, but I can't wait until classes start on Monday. It's already an exciting time on our campuses, and it's only going to get better. And as always, go Cougs. Phil, thanks so much.
Thanks, Kirk. Your comment about this is the reason we're here, I was feeling that just yesterday as I was driving home and seeing students on campus, the activity, the energy. That is why we do this work, because we love interacting with students, and we love having them back here on campus. So we are looking forward to a great semester. Before we jump into some of the nuts and bolts of the announcement that the governor made yesterday, I'd like to take kind of maybe a little bit of a higher view. And Provost Chilton, I'd love to have you talk about, what do you expect that students are going to see in classrooms and in labs in the fall? We have some students who are sophomores who have not set foot on campus before. So for those students, whether they be first-year students or their second-year students who haven't been on their particular campus, what can they expect in the classrooms and in the labs?
Yes. Well, thanks, Phil. I mean, I just wanted to pile on the comments about being so excited to see our students here. I've been provost at WSU for 1 year, and yesterday at the pep rally, I got to see more students in person than I have in the entire past year. And it was really exciting and a great honor to be there. So first of all, we've been planning since the spring to offer a robust face-to-face experience in the classroom and outside the classroom that you'll hear about in a little bit. But in the classroom, in the courses for this fall across the system, many of our faculty have used the past year as an opportunity to really expand their teaching methods, really think about the best practices in terms of incorporating instructional technologies, but also the value of that face-to-face experience. And so the numbers that I've seen so far, 80% of our courses across the system are 100% in person, fully face-to-face, and the rest are mostly face-to-face with some online learning modules to give students more flexibility and also to incorporate those sort of updated teaching practices into the classroom.
So Elizabeth, you sort of touched on that, but I'm curious, we've for the last 17 months or so, we've been having to do our teaching virtually. What have we learned over this last year and a half about how to provide instruction to students? Are there lessons we could take out of COVID-19?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as I mentioned, many faculty have really used the past year to really expand their teaching repertoire, if you will. And I want to recognize our Office of Academic Outreach and Innovation. They really offered our instructors training related to new digital tools, instructional practices throughout the past year and a half. For example, some of the things that faculty have done in terms of breakout rooms in Zoom were really excellent practice for how you support small group discussions in a face-to-face classroom. Some instructors also will be using online shared documents, lecture capture technology. We've brought on a new slew of undergraduate learning assistants where undergraduates will be assisting their fellow students in their learning, and other resources to really better support the learning of every student within their fall classes and beyond.
Great, thank you. Elizabeth, one of the questions that we did see that people had submitted in advance was from a student who wondered, what is their experience going to be like when they get into the classroom? Are people going to ask them for their vaccination status when they go into the classroom?
Yeah, so our instructors should not ask students about their vaccination status, and they will not have a list of vaccinated students. That information is being tracked by Cougar Health Services, and students who haven't completed the required vaccine by September 10th will be contacted directly to ensure compliance with the vaccination policy.
Great. And so are there responsibilities that faculty members might have in the classroom having to do with COVID?
Yeah, so faculty will be responsible for following the guidelines set by WSU, which of course are consistent with the state and federal guidelines, and we adjust as we need to. So as you mentioned earlier, effective on Monday, all faculty, staff, and students are going to be asked to wear masks indoors per Governor Inslee's policy. And if there's a conflict within or between students about mask wearing, faculty can ask the student to leave the classroom, and we would ask them to report the incident to our Center for Community Standards. This is per existing policies. Of course, students who demonstrate symptoms of COVID or are sick should not be attending the classroom, and faculty can ask the students to leave the classroom. So all of that is in the FAQ, lots of additional resources there. And I'm sure that one of our support staff have already put the link in the chat here for people to get that COVID-19 FAQ.
Great, thank you, Elizabeth. Another question I have for you, the last year and a half has been a challenge for everybody, obviously, having to pivot very quickly from in-person to online learning. And there's been a lot of work that's been done at WSU to provide support, not only to students, but also support to faculty and staff. Can you touch a little bit on sort of the lessons we may have learned around providing support, whether it be academic support, emotional support, mental health support? What kinds of things have we learned from COVID around how to reinforce and provide students, faculty, and staff what they need to be successful?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I want to echo what President Schultz said at the beginning, which is to just thank all of our faculty and staff for all of the work that they've done over the past year and a half to support our students. It's been stressful for all of us, and especially for those who are caregivers for children or other family members. So we've learned a few lessons. Certainly we've adjusted some of our academic policies in support of faculty and academic affairs, but we've really learned to be kind to ourselves and to one another, to extend grace when things aren't running as smoothly as we'd like. Important to remind ourselves of that. The importance of self-care and maintaining that work-life balance. It's been extra challenging when we've been Zooming from our homes to sort of, keep that straight in our heads and not have work infuse everything that we do and allow time for ourselves. And then finally, just as I've mentioned a couple times already, I think we've learned new ways to teach and to work together remotely. Certain things have worked better remotely, or at least worked well. And other things, absolutely, we've learned need to be in person. That's the social glue and that's why we're here. So that's what we're focusing on now, is getting us back to fully in person as safely and as quickly as possible.
Great, thank you. Well said. And anything else you'd like to add?
No, just thank you to everyone for your patience. We are navigating and we are in this together, and we will try to keep you as up to date as we possibly can. And please continue to send those questions, and it really helps us make sure we're getting the right information out.
I would echo what you had to say about giving each other grace and giving ourselves grace. I think we are all getting comfortable to the situation of being back in groups of people. And again, we'll be fully masked starting on Monday, but we just need to remember this is going to be a change from the way we've had to operate for the last year and a half. And so it's going to be an exciting and a fun semester, but it's going to take us getting a little bit of time to get used to it. So I'd like to turn now to Haley and Joel, if I could. Haley, I know that media have been talking about Washington State University's 12-point plan for how we're going to get ready for COVID-19 and how to make sure that we mitigate the potential spread of the virus on all of our campuses across the state. Can you tell us a little bit about what that 12-point plan includes?
Sure, thanks, Phil. I think most importantly above anything is our vaccine requirement. So WSU, as everyone knows, has implemented a vaccine requirement for students and employees. And Teresa will provide more information later on the employee requirement, and Joel's going to go through some of the details on that student requirement. But it's important to remember that we can't test our way out of a pandemic, but we can mitigate our way out of a pandemic. And the most important thing is that vaccination. Our second point is that we're really encouraging everyone to stay home if they're feeling ill. I think nationwide, we have a bad history of working through the pain. But if you're really not feeling well, stay home. And we've encouraged our supervisors and our instructors to have a bit of flexibility around that. Elizabeth touched on that as well. We also, as everyone knows, Governor Inslee announced a mask mandate yesterday for the entire state going into place Monday. Prior to that, WSU still encourages everyone who's indoors to wear a face covering, regardless of your vaccination status. We've got to protect ourselves and others, but particularly if you're around folks whose vaccination status is unknown. Additionally, we have sanitation supplies available across all of our campuses, ready as needed. Our Fac Ops team has done a phenomenal job where building systems allow to increase that outside air volume coming through, so our ventilation is prepped and ready for the pandemic. We also have plenty of personal protective equipment available for anyone who needs it. So we'll have masks available, our medical students and our medical facilities are ready. For Pullman particularly, we have isolation and quarantine space for any students in residence halls who need that. We're also willing to work with students who don't live in our residence halls. And I want to give a shout out to Jill's team for really creating a warm and inclusive environment in that isolation and quarantine space. We know that that's not where anyone wants to end up, but if you're there, we're going to do the best to make it as homey as possible. We've also implemented a few more outreach initiatives. One is developing a set of people we're calling COVID coordinators across the university system. So they're responsible for getting all the latest guidance from the state, from environmental health and safety, et cetera, and disseminating that information out to the department. So we're hoping to have everyone get the most up-to-date information a little bit earlier. We're also working on additional communications out to our communities. We recognize that WSU is in the heart of many of our communities across the state, and we want to be good partners to that. The other thing I want to touch on a little bit is particularly for Pullman, we recognize we have a huge transient student population that comes into Pullman in the fall. We're excited they're back. It's great to see them. But with that, when you bring 18,000 students anywhere, you're going to see some uptick in cases. And so we've put together with environmental health and safety and some of our public health experts a risk calendar. So we're monitoring when we anticipate spikes in cases and things like that. And we're prepared to scale up our response as needed. The final piece that I know is a hot topic for everybody is testing. And I'm actually going to turn that over to Joel to talk about what our testing protocols are.
Well, thanks, Haley, and good afternoon to everybody out there in Coug Nation. I do want to talk about what testing will look like for the upcoming academic year. Whether you're new on campus this year or whether you were with us for last year, it is going to look significantly different. So last year, before we had a vaccine, testing was one of the primary tools for combating the pandemic. Now we have a vaccine, and that's fantastic. And so the approach to testing does change just a little bit. It is still very important to get tested if you have symptoms or a known exposure to somebody with COVID. And as far as student testing is concerned, Cougar Health Services and our corporate partners at Insight have been testing continuously throughout the pandemic and through all of summer. That's been primarily at the Washington building here at the bottom of Stadium Way. But for fall semester, we want folks to know that we're reopening our satellite care clinic up at Bustad, which is halfway up Stadium Way. And all student testing will take place there. We'll get a link in the chat that explains that. And if you follow that link, it'll describe to you what I'm about to say. But there is a differentiation between unvaccinated students and vaccinated students when it comes to diagnostic testing. So regardless of your vaccination status, if you're experiencing symptoms of COVID, please go get tested right away. Now, if you are vaccinated, it's okay to wait 3 to 5 days before you get tested, as long as you're asymptomatic. The important thing is follow the advice of the contact tracers. If a contact tracer from WSU calls you, they'll give you instructions about what to do and whether or not you need to go get a diagnostic test. We definitely want you to continue to wear a mask in an indoor public setting until 14 days after the exposure or until you've received a negative test result in that instance. So if you are fully vaccinated, you can return to a WSU location as long as you're not experiencing any COVID-like symptoms. For employees, just want to emphasize Cougar Health Service does not do any COVID testing for employees, and WSU has not provided diagnostic testing for faculty and staff throughout the pandemic, but encourage you to work with your healthcare provider for testing options. If you schedule a test through your healthcare provider, insurance usually covers the cost. In addition, most pharmacies in your area, whether you're on the Pullman campus or out across the system, have over-the-counter test kits, which can be purchased and used for screening purposes if you feel that's necessary. We are also doing travel testing for students that do need certification, and we'll do that for Cougar Health Service as well. And there was a quote yesterday in the governor's press conference that I think is worth repeating, which is that we're well past the point where testing is enough. We're in this position because there are not enough people vaccinated. And I just want to throw a huge shout out to all the amazing Cougs that did come in and get screening testing last year when we were pushing that. But if you haven't been vaccinated, just as the sign on Beasley says, that is now the answer, and that is the way out of this. Just as Haley just said, we can't test our way out of this pandemic. We've got to mitigate our way. And the number one way to do that is to get the vaccine.
Thanks, Joel. There was a lot of stuff there, and I'd like to just maybe, if I could, just reiterate those 12 points just to make sure I've got them clear in my head. So first thing, Haley, you talked about the vaccine requirement. One thing I'll say, just for benefit of viewers, in addition to the mandate that the governor put in place yesterday, as Haley and Joel mentioned, WSU had a requirement in place for students to be vaccinated by fall semester. We made that decision back in April of last year. WSU was the first university in the state, in fact, to require vaccines for students. Obviously, one of the reasons we had to do that was since we're on a semester system, our semester ended the first week of May, and we needed to make that decision before students left. But we've now seen many other universities and colleges in the state of Washington follow our lead and require vaccines for students. I'd like to talk a little bit about that here in a second. But so the first item under that 12-point plan was the vaccine requirements. Haley then mentioned if you are feeling ill for any reason, please stay home. I think that is critical. Face coverings, again, starting on Monday, requirement for everybody indoors in the state. We'll have sanitation supplies available. We are continuing to make ventilation, increase the ventilation in buildings so that we can get as much outside air in and turn over that air handling as quickly as we can. We have personal protective equipment available. Students and faculty and staff, for that matter, time for you to pull out those masks if they've been stuck in a drawer for the last couple of weeks. We will have testing protocols in place. There is isolation and quarantine space available for students who live on the Pullman campus. That was important for us to have in place last year. We're going to have that available this year as well. We will continue to do contact tracing. As Joel mentioned, WSU actually has a cadre of trained contact tracers that make themselves available beyond just the needs of WSU and are trying to help communities with just adding more staff who are trained to do contact tracing. We do have the COVID coordinators. It's going to be really critical. One of the things we're seeing across the state is that the Delta variant is affecting different counties and different locales differently, and we're going to need to make sure that we have really tight coordination with all of our campuses, all of our research and learning centers across the state, all of our offices in every county. Also have the risk calendar that Haley mentioned. So we're identifying those events that might have greater numbers of people together. We can do what we can to mitigate those when people are getting together. And then finally, she talked about the outreach and communication. Joel, you mentioned a little bit about students and getting vaccinated. Can you talk to us a little bit more about where are we at with the number of students who have declared their vaccination status and perhaps the number that have actually received the vaccine?
Yeah, thanks, Phil. You saw exactly where I was going with that. And I think we actually have a slide that we can put up here that shows that status. This information is about 24 hours old, but I wanted to break this down by campus for everybody out in the system. So the top number shows the number of students who've complied with WSU's COVID vaccine policies so far. That means they've either gotten the vaccine and they're fully vaccinated and they've uploaded a picture of their vaccine card to their portal, or they've requested one of the approved religious exemptions, medical exemptions, or a personal or philosophical exemption. So any one of those will put them into that bucket, which is showing in the top line. Now, of those that are compliant, we have been breaking out the percentage that are vaccinated. So of those who've submitted on the WSU Pullman campus, we've been tracking about a 93 to 94% vaccination rate since we started collecting that information in July. And the interesting thing is that every week when that number goes up, when it started out at 600 and up to 1,200 to 2,500, it's continued to hover right around that 94% vaccination rate. As of about an hour ago, just about 11,000 students at WSU Pullman had submitted either an exemption request or their vaccine card. So that puts us a little bit closer to the 60% figure for our campus here in Pullman. What I really want to encourage students to do is, regardless of your campus, please comply with that September 10th deadline to upload or to request an exemption so that we know exactly who's been vaccinated and who hasn't, so that we can get you processed for an exemption if you do qualify for one. And we can leave that slide up as long as everybody wants to, but I am going to keep talking a little bit about vaccines. And I'm going to actually repeat something that Dr. Shaw said yesterday, which is, Delta is a game changer. It's very easily transmissible, and masks and vaccines work better together. And I know some of us have a little bit of heartburn about having to put that mask on, but that added protection against airborne transmission of the virus, even if you're vaccinated, is really going to protect those folks who can't get vaccinated because they may have an immunocompromised status or a religious objection to vaccination, which is totally fine. We have to kind of go back to thinking about this as far as Cougs taking care of Cougs and Cougs taking care of the community. And so while it's easy to think that, morbidity and mortality in the younger age population might be less significant, this has a tremendous impact on the community, especially as we see hospitals filling up around the county and around the state. It's a big problem. And so this is a great example of how Cougs can do their part for the community. As of August 16th, 72% of Washingtonians over the age of 12 have received at least one dose of the vaccine, and I think that's fantastic. I did the numbers here in Whitman County, and there's been 52,000 doses administered, Cougar Health actually administered 4,000 doses before the end of spring semester to students when they became eligible, and we're really proud of that. But the evidence is clear that the COVID vaccine is safe and effective. The serious long and short-term side effects are extremely rare. There's been, I think, close to 340 million doses of the vaccine administered in the United States to date, and on the order of billions of vaccine administered worldwide now. While COVID, on the other hand, has killed 600,000 people in the United States. So vaccination really is the way out of this pandemic. And I know that it's something that it causes people, I think, a lot of emotional and sometimes physical concern when we think about something that's new, like a vaccine under the EUA. And we've tried to be, I think, very accommodating of that. And that's exactly why, as Phil points out, that when WSU was on the vanguard of implementing a vaccine requirement, that we provided those provisions for the exemptions, and that we've considered the EUA as part of that process. But that this vaccine policy has really been implemented to protect all members of the university community. And I think that this is really what gets us back on track for that on-campus, in-person experience, which we've all been enjoying so far over the last couple of weeks, and we really want to make sure we keep that going.
Thanks, Joel. You mentioned the September 10th deadline. I know that back in April, when we first announced that people would need to get vaccinated, we told them we wanted them vaccinated by the start of the semester. However, we recognized that we weren't going to really kind of hold people accountable until the 1st of November. And the reason was that accountability was if people hadn't completed the vaccination process, or if they hadn't received an exemption by that time, they wouldn't be allowed to register for classes in the spring semester. Now that November 1st date has now been pushed back, I guess you would say, back to September 10th, as you mentioned. Can you tell us a little bit about what that date represents, and if students haven't gone through the process yet of indicating their vaccination status, what those steps would look like?
Yeah, thanks, Phil. We highlighted that September 10th date so that we could do one big last push for vaccination for students that are just coming onto their campus before the beginning of the semester. So that allows at least a 3-week period from first dose, if you get that now, to the second dose in a 2-dose series. Students can just go to the Cougar Health website and upload proof of their COVID-19 vaccination through the patient portal, and that's regardless of what campus you're on. Similarly, there's a module that you can click on there to go through to apply for an exemption. That's really a painless process. It's just going to take a couple of minutes, and then you'll get the form, and then you can submit either that religious, medical, or personal exemption. If you are requesting a medical exemption, that will require a note of some kind from one of your licensed medical providers. And then we'll get that processed and uploaded for you. We ask for a little bit of grace there because obviously those are pouring in at the rate of a couple hundred a day. So just give us 1 to 2 business days before that shows as compliant on your end of the portal.
Great, thanks, Joel. Anything else you or Haley want to mention before we move on to the next topic?
I want to thank just everybody out in the Coug family, like Provost Chilton. I'm fairly new to this community. I think I mispronounced Washingtonian earlier, so there's my chance to get it right. But I've just been overwhelmed by the outpouring of support, by the concern, by all the conversations that I've had with folks, whether they're fully supportive of the policies, whether they think they don't go far enough, or whether they just have questions about why we're doing things. I really encourage folks to keep asking those questions. It really just shows that I think all Cougs care about this greater community and the experience that the students are getting. And that we're all in this together and trying to do the best thing for each other. So I really, truly, deeply appreciate that. And I'm honored to be part of this team as we navigate this new academic year. Go Cougs.
Great. Thank you, Joel. I appreciate that. I'd like to turn now, if we could, to Teresa. Teresa, obviously, we got news from the governor yesterday that impacts faculty and staff across the Washington State University system. Could you maybe just spend a minute just to give us, again, a quick recap of what the governor had to say? And then I'd like to dive into some of the details if we can.
Great. Thank you, Phil. And first, I want to just welcome all the WSU faculty, staff, and students back for fall semester. It's really quite enjoyable to see people on campus and in the hallways. So welcome. And then I'll get to answering the fun questions right now. So Yesterday, the governor announced the requirement for all school employees in the state, including higher ed, to be fully vaccinated by October 18th. The governor also announced vaccinations are a condition of employment. Faculty, staff, contractors, and volunteers who decline to get vaccinated may be subject to dismissal. The governor is permitting exemptions for medical and sincerely held religious reasons. Personal exemptions will not be permitted under yesterday's order. In addition, masks must be worn indoors throughout the state, regardless of vaccination status starting Monday. A couple things I just want to point out. What can employees do? First of all, if you're sick, stay home, wear a mask indoors, follow the COVID protocols. And as everyone else has said, patience is appreciated. The announcement was just yesterday. We're working on updating our information and guidance to meet the protocols the governor has outlined. And those should be, as soon as we can, we'll get that information out there. The process for verifying vaccinations for employees, we're working on that also, and we'll have more information as soon as those details are figured out. So again, appreciate what everyone is doing. I know these are very challenging times. And with that, Phil, I'm ready for your first question.
All right. Well, I think one of the things, Teresa, that you mentioned, I think is important to really drive home, which is this is 24 hours old, this information. And at least my understanding of what the governor had to say yesterday was he was going to leave it up to individual institutions, in our case, Washington State University, to kind of figure out the details of how we verify vaccination status for employees, how we track that, the issue around exemptions. And I think that, WSU had already been started down this path, and it sounds like things may diverge a little bit. And I'd like to talk about that. So the governor gave employees until October 18th to be fully vaccinated. Now, we had instructed employees to declare their vaccination status by Monday. And so do we still want people to complete that declaration process through our Workday application?
Yes, employees should still complete their declaration by Monday, August 23rd. That provides great guidance for our areas on who is vaccinated, who may not be yet. And then the process, so there'll still be a declaration process and probably a verification, a vaccine process in the future. But yes, you will still need to complete your declaration by Monday, the 23rd.
Great. And then I want to make sure I'm clear. You just mentioned that it sounds like, at least as I interpreted what the governor had to say, is we may actually have to go through a different process for people to actually verify their vaccination status. So is that the case? And if so, I'm assuming you're working through the details on that?
Yes, that's our understanding based on his announcement yesterday. We're waiting for his written proclamation so we can ensure we're in compliance. But yes, there'll be a different process for that formal verification of vaccination status.
Great, thank you. And we also have talked about this idea of being able to get exemptions for various reasons, a medical exemption, a sincerely held religious exemption, or in the WSU version, we had an exemption for personal reasons. Now, the governor has specifically done away with the personal exemption, and we had a process here at WSU for people to apply for those medical or religious exemptions. But my sense is that our process is going to be different than what the governor is going to require of us. So is my understanding correct that we may have to kind of redo that step if we're seeking some kind of an exemption? Is that the case?
Yes, once we have the process updated, very likely there'll be a revision that will require everyone to probably either go in and verify the vaccination status or their exemption status. And the processes will be detailed out, waiting for what is outlined by the state. So yes, there will probably be changes. The personal exemption goes away. So definitely there'll be modifications to the declaration, and then the verification process will outline what specific information we need from employees to meet that deadline of October 18th.
Great. And Haley had mentioned the idea of our COVID coordinators. I imagine that's a group that is going to be getting this information once we have these new processes in place. We'll be pushing those out to the COVID coordinators as well as to all faculty and staff across the system so that it really everybody knows what they need to do and when they need to do it. But as a recap, October 18th is the deadline to be fully vaccinated. That the governor was very clear about that. That means if you're taking a 2-shot regime, you're going to need to have both of your shots and your 2-week period after that second shot before the 18th of October. So if you're an employee, if you're a volunteer, if you're a contractor for WSU, you fall under the governor's mandate. We need to be making plans now to get those vaccines if we haven't done so already. One thing I will say, the state of Washington has a great website available. It's called the Vaccine Locator website. It provides, you just simply put in your zip code and it gives you a list of all the locations in your area where you can get the vaccine. And the vaccines are free. It's quick, it's easy. We have plenty of supply. So it doesn't take a lot of time for us to do that when we need to. Teresa, anything else that we haven't covered from an employee perspective that we should discuss?
Yeah, just really quick, HRS will have information, and then we'll offer some training sessions for supervisors and employees regarding the updates to the vaccination process. So those will be coming as soon as we get the details worked out.
Well, great. We will stay tuned, knowing that more information will be made available as soon as the processes are defined and clarified at the state level. So thank you to the HRS staff. I know your team, Teresa, have been working feverishly for the last 24 hours trying to make sure that we have processes in place that are going to be compliant with the requirements that the governor's put in place for us. So thank you to your team. Jill, I'd like to maybe pivot a little bit and move to talk to what students can experience outside the classroom. Provost Chilton talked to us about what they can expect inside, but we all know that you get as much of your learning outside the classroom as you do inside. And so what can students, from a student life perspective, what can students expect in fall semester?
Thanks, Phil. We are unbelievably excited to have our students back in Pullman, and we've already started to see some of those robust outside of the classroom opportunities occur. We've been doing Week of Welcome activities since our first students moved into the halls on Friday. And since then, we welcomed more than 3,000 students back, and we expect to have about 4,800 total students living in the residence halls this fall. And I'm really excited to report too that about 20% of the students in our residence halls this year will be sophomores. We know so many of our sophomores missed their traditional first-time, first-year experiences last year. So we're focusing on experiences both for first-time, first-year students and first-time to Pullman students, because there are many. But I really want our students to pay attention to the rest of Week of Welcome activities. You can find those at wow.wsu.edu. That is WOW, Week of Welcome, at .wsu.edu, and you can link to our Presence software database, which lists every single one of our Week of Welcome activities. Tomorrow we have our new student convocation, and so that will be another opportunity for students to come together. But mostly I'm just seeing students that are unbelievably excited to see each other. The students that we have been able to engage with are clearly enjoying the experience they're having so far. We know that this fall semester is going to be challenging, also exciting, and a little bit nerve-wracking, and that's okay. And we're here to help all of our students navigate all of the things. And we want to encourage all of our students to ask for help when they need it.
Thanks, Jill. I had conversations with some of my colleagues on the other campuses earlier this week, and they were saying that as early as 2 weeks ago, students were starting to filter back to the various campuses, just kind of scoping things out and making sure they knew what buildings their classes were going to be in, and having those conversations with advisors and with financial aid officers and the like. So I know all of our campuses have been seeing ramp ups in activity, and I think we're all really excited to kick things off on Monday. So thank you. Anything else from a student life perspective that we should cover before we move on?
I just want to encourage all of our students to find their people, find their squad, find their community. There are so many different ways to do that right now, and a lot of our students haven't had interaction with each other outside of Slack or Discord or other message boards. And we've got so many things happening that if there's something that you want to do or an interest you've always wanted to explore and you haven't had a chance to do that, make sure you check out our registered student organizations. We have over 300 of them here at WSU. And if there isn't an organization that fits your interests, you just need you and a couple of friends to establish one, and we'll help get you going. But mainly, again, I want our students to be comfortable seeking out new experiences and also asking for help when they need it.
You know, Jill, I want to echo that last thing you just said, particularly for students who have not had an opportunity to be on campus before. Reach out if you have any questions, if you need help, if you have confusion, or just want advice. Know that your staff and your faculty at Washington State University have been itching to be able to be back in person, to be able to have those conversations with students. We have hordes of people who are waiting to be of assistance to you. So if you have a question, ask, because I can tell you we've got the resources, the services you may need to make sure that you have a great experience this semester and for the rest of your time here at Washington State. So thank you, Jill. I'd like to move, if I could, just to have Pat Chun join us and talk a little bit about what athletic competitions are going to look like here in the fall. I know there's been lots of interest in whether we would be able to have sporting events. And so, Pat, do you want to, first of all, before we jump in, do you have anything to comment on with regard to the governor's statement? Obviously, the governor's mandate impacts all employees, including athletics department employees. So any thoughts on the mask mandates and on the vaccination mandate?
Well, first and foremost, we want to welcome everybody back to campus, and we're excited to get Pullman going again here. And relative to the governor's mandates, I mean, we applaud the efforts of Governor Inslee to protect the health and safety of everyone in Washington and at our university. And like all mandates, all local, state, Pac-12, and NCAA guidelines, we're going to work to ensure that everyone associated with athletics will follow. So we got a busy year ahead of us. We're expecting, we want a full Martin Stadium. We want full capacity at all of our venues. We hosted the pep rally for freshmen last night. It's probably the first time in 20 months we've had actual students or cheering inside Martin Stadium. Gisa Field. It's eerie to hear. To see cardboard cutouts in all of our venues. So it's no secret what has made us so special for all these years has been the energy that only students and Cougs can bring into a venue. And soccer gets going tonight, and football in a couple of weeks, volleyball in a couple of weeks. But we want as many people in our facilities as possible to cheer on our student athletes. They're working hard, and all of us inside here in athletics believe this could be one of those special years in athletics.
So, Pat, what is guiding the decision-making around capacity for various venues?
Well, we're fortunate to be supported by such great partners here in Pullman, on our campus, in Whitman County and throughout the state. So like everything, we know that things can change, but with everything, we'll continue to work with campus and state to ensure that whatever capacity is, we will be at whatever's allowable.
Great, thank you. This is a question I know that we've heard from some football fans in particular, and the question is, what is tailgating going to look like this year? Are we going to allow people to tailgate?
Well, today everything is full go with tailgating. There are no restrictions as of now. So our hope is, we know how important these Saturdays are to Cougs. These are 7 sacred Saturdays that really connect all of us together. And it's something that can only happen to Pullman. We know how important it is. So like everything, things could change. But right now, where we sit today, I mean, we're all systems go with tailgating.
Great, thanks, Pat. And this last year and a half, while most of us have been either working from home or taking classes from home, many of our student athletes were actually on campus and continuing to work out, continue to compete. And I know there was a lot of work that's been done over the last year and a half to keep our student athletes healthy. Can you talk a little bit about some of the steps that were taken to provide support and keep our student athletes healthy during this last year and a half period?
Well, first and foremost, nothing can replace the accountability and ownership our student athletes took in terms of ensuring that they were able to compete. And in a COVID world, I mean, we all recognize what they did in the classroom and what they did competitively. It's just a testament to their character and their will and the desire to be the best they can be. So as we go forward, we have rules that are in place from the Pac-12, NCAA, Whitman County, and the state, and we'll continue to follow them. But we're fortunate. We have a wonderful group of student athletes that want to represent Washington State at the highest levels, have significant goals, whether it's academic or athletic. And we had some record-setting performances last year. And we see what's happening over the summertime. Our student athletes have some conviction relative to making it through this year, and they're just excited to be out and to be able to perform around in front of fellow students and other Cougs again. It was a gap that can only be filled by Cougs.
Great. And Pat, you made the comment that it was kind of eerie to be having students competing to stands filled with cardboard cutouts. What do you think it's going to mean to our student athletes to have fans back in the stands this year?
Well, like I told the freshmen last night at the rally, there really is. I mean, we take pride in the fact that we're the one school that many opponents don't want to come to, and that's really a reflection of our students and how they impact the game and just how joined they are at the hip with our athletes. So, and it's just we learned the hard way. It's when Noah Williams hits a game-winning shot, when Charlie Sledger-Walker hits a game-winning shot, when Max Borghi goes down for what should be a game-winning touchdown, it's one thing to celebrate with your teammates, but man, it should bring joy to everybody when we see those things live. So there was no replacement for it. It was a pretty odd year to go through, and we're a little bit unique because I don't know if there's any school in the Pac-12 that's impacted more by their students and their alums than we are at Washington State.
Great. Thank you, Pat. Anything else you want to add from an athletic perspective before we move on?
Our soccer team is out. We begin tonight at 7:00, and that is a team with championship goals. So if you can get out, if you want to see exactly what Washington State is all about, it's a pretty special setting. If you want to see why we have the best home field advantage across the board in all of our sports, get out to the soccer field tonight at 7:00.
I will echo that. It's a special time in the fall to be able to watch soccer outside here on the Pullman campus. So thank you.
Okay.
Yes, go Cougs. I just want to, before we move on, we're getting close to the top of the hour. Any comments that were in the chat that any of our panelists want to comment on? I know there was the chat section has been active.
Yeah, Phil, I would like to address one set of comments that came through. One of the things we learned in this past year, I alluded to it, is that there are some ways that the use of technology for teaching and learning has been advantageous. But also we've seen nationally, and our accrediting bodies have pointed out that a lot of students struggled with the online Zoom environment, whether it was because of access to hardware or software or quiet space or internet. They have provided us with very precise regulations that we must follow if we're going to continue video conferencing of any kind, including Zoom, for classroom setting, for anything other than our global campus. There were a couple of memos that I think were posted in the chat, but I did really want to underscore that this is not up to a faculty member alone. In fact, our students signed up for classes understanding that they would be face-to-face or mostly face-to-face. And so according to the faculty manual, if an instructor wants to shift their instructional modality, they need to get this approved by the chair or director, and then that request goes to the registrar for further review. So I just want to underscore that, make sure there's no misunderstanding that this can sort of be up to person by person. There are procedures that we have to follow in order to make sure we're supporting our students and delivering the instruction that they signed up for.
Great, thank you. I think that's important. I know that a lot of students are looking forward to that face-to-face experience. So I'm glad we can finally be in a position to provide it. President Schultz, I'm going to turn it back to you, see if you have any closing comments before we end up for the day.
Well, Phil, thank you so much. And just a shout out to my colleagues here for the great work that they're doing. I just want to reinforce a couple things that have been mentioned. I think as Dean Jill Creighton mentioned, we have so many opportunities for students across all of our campuses to be involved and engaged. To me, I think if we learned one thing this last year, education is not just content delivery, it's interaction with people, whether that be faculty, staff, and students or colleagues. It's those interests that we have outside the classroom that become part of the Coug experience. So, I just urge you to, for our students that are watching this, to go find a group of colleagues doing some fun things that will be an important part of your experience, regardless of what campus that you're on. I also appreciate the fact that folks have spent an hour of their time watching us, hopefully learning, seeing where we are, hopefully getting some of that nervous energy about next Monday. People hopefully feeling a little relaxed that we're working hard to make sure we have a safe environment. But I really have 4 things to kind of wrap this up. The first is get vaccinated. We want to continue to take that message forward. You've heard that again and again and again. Really, really important. Second, mask up. And look, I got used to not wearing a mask, and at one point I had them in my car and my pockets of my jackets and all those things. It sucks to go back there. But I think, as Joel talked about, the combination of being vaccinated and having that mask on indoors just really makes a difference in keeping you and your colleagues around you safe. Third, wash your hands. I think we've all gotten used to washing our hands a little bit more, but boy, it's really helped in a lot of things. So we don't want to forget doing that. That's really important. The final thing, though, is instead of going into a group and thinking, oh man, I got to wear a mask again, I got vaccinated, why do I have to do this? And then there are a bunch of people there. Enjoy being around people. Enjoy going out to eat and having people there. Enjoy getting together with your colleague students or colleague faculty members or staff members. And instead of saying, oh, I can't believe I got to wear the mask, to me, after being isolated for so long, I want people to have joy being around the individuals and not worry about the constraints, but worry about the good things. So with that, let's have a great semester. I'm thrilled to have people back. It's fun to be around our students. I want our students to have a great experience while you're here, and we want to do everything we can to help that. So with that, Phil, go Cougs, and thank you everybody for joining us.
Great. Thank you, Kirk. I know that this is a particularly busy day for a lot of different campuses. There are meetings that start at 2 p.m. So we're going to try and end this just a little bit early so people can move to their next meetings. But thank you to all of you who've taken the hour to join us. Again, I recognize that you all had to change your schedules at the last minute, but it was important to us that we were able to have an opportunity to talk with you. So thank you for joining us. Thank you to our panelists, as always. Also want to thank the unsung heroes, our subject matter experts who are managing the chat for us. Appreciate you being able to provide resources in real time for people who had questions. We look forward to seeing people in the classroom on Monday. Get vaccinated, put on your masks, and as always, go Cougs.